Today on the podcast, we have Oscar and Kiya Frazier. Both are entrepreneurs and both are working in the same business as a couple. And they help couple-preneurs, couple entrepreneurs, develop structure and strategies that nurture the balance between business and home. So they advise couple-preneurs on areas including stress management, trust and respect boundaries, optimizing combined efforts, avoiding communication breakdowns, and the art of unplugging and letting the bedroom be a bedroom, not a boardroom. They're on a mission to help couples thrive in their business and thrive in their relationship as they continue to grow in entrepreneurship. Oscar, Kiya, thank you so much for being on.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for having us.
So I love to dive around your background, your intentions behind going into business. And going into business itself and running as an entrepreneur can be difficult in itself, but doing this with your partner, that adds more. Let's add more ingredients to the complexity of the recipe. Let's put it that way. So
Absolutely.
I'd love to know your background in regards to why start a company initially, and then why go in it together, and how you were able to make that fruitful.
I think you want to give them the real story about how everything started and how we lost everything and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that.
We'll give them leading up to 2012
Let's do it.
and then how that happened. So we both have always had an entrepreneurial spirit. And since 2004, we've kind of been doing our own entrepreneurial thing, as well as being in the corporate space. Successful careers in the corporate space, Oscar program management in federal space, and for myself, marketing in the federal space as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we were doing that, running steady. We were dating at the time, had recently got engaged, and had it all kind of mapped out. We would stay in the corporate space for a while, continue to do our entrepreneurial thing, and then eventually branch out and start our own company, start our own business. So we had it all mapped out, all planned out, kids in the equation and everything. We just had a beautiful plan. We got married, went on our honeymoon, and spent a lot of time kind of mapping out what our future would look like on our honeymoon. And then shortly after we got back from our honeymoon, my contract actually ended. I was rolled off of a contract, which was a bit of a blow for us, being that we were a dual income family, and really, striving to continue to build. So took that blow. I was stressed out about it. Then we had to start reprogramming and kind of thinking through what was going to be the next game plan. I was nervous, but I felt like this was the perfect time for us to really start continuing to go down that entrepreneurial path. And then we had that security blanket of us still being in the corporate space as well. So we just continued to start building nDemand at that point, and really starting to get the branding situated and all of that good stuff. And then I was working on building clients and mapping that all out while he was still in that federal space. So.
Yeah, it's so interesting story, right? So that was like the fluffy, friendly side of what happened. But so the day after we got back from our honeymoon was when she got let go, right? And so all the things that we had written down, all the plans and all that stuff had pretty much came crashing and burning. So net, when I was still inside the corporate space under the contract, I was still moving pretty well, still doing well at that time, but I had to let go of about 127 people in one day.
Oh, wow.
On the contract it ended with a large bank, and I unfortunately had to do that, and that was very stressful. But shortly thereafter, I got the call as well. I walked into the room at the office, and they told me that, Oscar, thank you for your service, thank you for your time, but your time is now up. And so now it went from a dual income down to one income, and then a couple months later it was now zero income. And so we literally had to look at each other and pull our bootstraps up and build nDemand Consulting one brick at a time now.
That's definitely like you're back against the wall there specifically, and from there you chose pretty much to move forward and build, which is pretty bold to be able to do that. What were you envisioning in the beginning of nDemand? Like, what was the initial vision and purpose to start?
Yeah, so in the very beginning, we would say we do three things. And this was always our elevator pitch. In the very beginning, it's been a very wide net. We would say we are a strategy, marketing, and execution consulting firm. And we thought that that was golden when we first got started. Until people started asking questions like, what the heck does that really mean? And what do you really actually do, right? So in the very beginning, man, we first start out to we want to service small businesses, whether it be business plans, graphic design, web design, new launch innovations, et cetera. But our career began just to morph, and we began to fine tune over the last 10 years. We really started to fine tune into what we actually do now.
And then for now, so that was a time frame to pivot. So your plan was continually being iterated and adapted. For now, how are you helping, entrepreneurs and couples?
Oh, wow, man. So on the couple side, people are still trying to figure out what that secret sauce really looks like. Mm-hmm. And in all honesty, man, it's really not a secret sauce, man. We say those fancy words and everything about the secret sauce of power couples, but it really is trial and error. In the very beginning, I think there's a few things that we have a book that we wrote in 2014 that perhaps we'll talk about at some point, but within that, we kind of go through those kind of like iterations, right? So like year one, you're going to have a lot of like ups and downs, peaks and valleys, because you're trying to figure out your lanes, right? We found ourselves bouncing over each other. I was in her marketing, graphic design, more innovation lane. And then sometimes she would come into my more operations, program management, technical lanes, man. So that's what really made it, I'm thinking super, super difficult in the very beginning. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but then we learned this thing called an introspective analysis. And we put that inside the book. And what that really does is it gives you a starting point. And again, I'm going to go a little nerdy here because that's just my background is technology. But you can think about a line on a sheet of paper, and in the very middle, mark a 0. And that's your current space. That's where you are today. What we did was we did an introspective of 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and 15 years ago. And we asked ourselves, what were the things that we set out to do that we did not accomplish 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? Then we go 3 ticks to the right of that median or that 0, and we look at +5, +10, +15. And then we said, what do we want to do, right? And how do we want to get there? And so what we had to do was the introspective analysis really boils down to saying, I know that 5 years ago, I had the following excuses as far as why I didn't accomplish X. But now I've figured those things out, and we say 3 things. I'm whole, perfect, and I'm strong, and I figured them out, and I'm ready to move forward. And then you do that for the 5-year, the 10-year, and the 15-year mark back. And then as you go forward is when you begin to say things like, now that I understand where I'm at today, in 5 years, I will accomplish the following thing because I no longer have the following excuses. And what that will do is it begins to just eliminate all of the noise, man. I mean, and being married in business, you're going to find a lot of noise because what happens when you're, at home, you may have an argument, right? Or you may have some things that happen that's not business related. And then you have to go into the office and, and act like that didn't happen. Yeah. So those are some of the challenges, man. But I know I may be going a little long-winded there, but that was one of the pieces that we did that truly helped us. And we still do that to this day on the introspective analysis.
That's really cool because one of the things that struck me was your emphasis on optimizing combined efforts, taking the best of what you bring to the table, what she brings to the table, and then making sure that it's easier said, and I hate that phrase, but it is easier said than done. Specifically that, we're going to make sure that when we're on the business, we're focusing just on business, but it's also a relationship because, some entrepreneurs are married to their business, but now we're working on the business, but we're also a couple that's married. How do you differentiate those two?
Transparency. So we've set up where, once we leave the office, that is our time. And we leave whatever we have going on in the office at that point. And I think that has helped us a lot. We talk about business all the time because we're passionate about what we do. Yeah. But it took a level of transparency and us really sitting down and talking through what we desired to do and what we wanted our business to be and what we wanted to pursue. That was the first thing. And then once you get that out the way, you're both passionate about it. So you don't mind in the middle of a movie, all of a sudden now we're talking about this technical solution and how we're going to get it done, or reaching out to the client, but it takes a level of transparency and not being afraid to be transparent with your partner.
Yep.
And be honest about what you want to do.
Do you believe in the notion of work-life balance?
What is that?
We try, but the honest answer is, in entrepreneurship, it does not exist to some extent. Yeah. It does not exist. I think that in the corporate space, yes, but when you're actually out here building and skinning and catching your fish, and that's the way that you eat, that balance, it doesn't really exist.
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story, man. One of our mentors, Irfan, really good guy. He's out in Silicon Valley. He runs a robotic process automation company. And when the first meeting we had with him, he said, "So tell me what you're passionate about," right? And so we're going down this path and we're saying stuff like, we're in the business of efficiency and all these fancy things that we say we're passionate about. And he said, "So how much money are you really making in that?" Right? And so what the point he was making there was that your passion sometimes has to be fueled by revenue. So sometimes you have to do passionless things initially, right? Especially as a couple in business or a new business trying to grow, or going from, the 1 million mark to the 5 million mark. What has to happen is you got to kind of start to break away what my passion projects are going to look like versus what my real revenue driving projects are going to look like. And when he said that, like a light bulb clicked on for me, because I was always trying to pursue what I really loved. And then the challenge with that sometimes is that it won't bring you revenue, right? And so his concept is allow what you have to do as far as building your business, what you're good at. Let that be what builds the revenue. And when you've got enough of the revenue, then you take that and you apply that, right, to your passion projects, man. And that kind of changed the game for us as well, because as a couple, I'm always saying, like, I wake up like I'm passionate about something today. Let's go, take on the world. And she's like, "Oscar, I don't know about this, man. I don't know if this is the right movement."
It's a sanity check, right? That's no, but that's so key, and it's so elemental to be able to have alignment within what is necessary and what you ought to do versus what you'd like to do. The old saying goes, if you do what you ought to do enough, you'll get to the day where you get to do what you want to do. But I really would like to get down to like a few strategies in regards to working, because I know that this is what you do within your business to help like couples or entrepreneurs working, because I think this applies even if for the entrepreneur that doesn't have their spouse or their partner working in business with them, it can still help them develop a nurturing relationship, because with entrepreneurship, there's always stress. There's only going to be a time of finding out what we can, optimize. There is going to be a time of not having clear communications, especially at home. So I know those things are real issues, but what are some of the, I guess, phases that you'd walk couples through in your strategy?
You want to take that one?
I think that the first thing is empowering each other, right, through fear and doubt, because there's always that level of fear. Can I really do this when you're trying to step out and build a business, right? So it goes back to transparency, talking with your spouse and letting them know, or just if you're a couple, if you're married, however it works, talking with your partner and letting them know, this is what I'm passionate about and this is what I want to do. What do you think about that? And then as the person on the receiving end of that, starting to think about ways that you can help that person research, find mentors, find training, find classes. Those little things go a long way when you're in a couple situation and one's an entrepreneur or both are entrepreneur. Just helping them find the things that they need in order to put the pieces together, that goes a long way. So that, I would say, that's step one.
Yeah. And what we normally do after that initial phase, in step two, we begin to look at you remember, I'm sure you probably heard this before, I'm sure the listeners have as well. When you think about someone saying each person has to give 100%, what we do is we change that mindset a bit for people that come to us. We let them know that it's okay to be at 70% sometimes. It's okay to be at 60% sometimes. And what happens is your partner has to be willing to then give that extra 40, that extra 30% in the areas of which you're weak in, right? And so that kind of goes with the point that Kiya was saying, where initially when you're writing down all of your fears Here's my weaknesses. Here's what I'm unsure of. Your partner then has to look up and they begin to research that stuff for you, right? And so now your partner's coming back to the next session with us, and he or she is saying, look, honey, I have found the following, pieces of information or things that you can do to fulfill that extra 30% that you need, that extra 40% that you may need. That's what that step 2 begins to look like. Step 3 is where it starts to get a little bit more, I'm going to use the word quote unquote real, because then we go into that introspective analysis that I talked about earlier in the conversation. We begin to really go back the 5-year and the 10-year and the 15-year mark, and we really want to dig in there, and we find out, why did you fail, right? Why did you not get those things done? What were those excuses, right? And then the final session is going to be your introspective forward thinking, right? The 5-year, 10-year, and 15-year, and how do you get to those points? And from there is when we, in that same sessions where we then go bullet by bullet, and we begin to go tactical level, right? So if you're saying you want to be an entrepreneur, what needs to happen year 1, year 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And we build that plan for you. So by the time you leave out of that final session, you will have a tactical plan that you will be able to use to get to the next level.
So I love that, because it all starts with self-awareness. Yeah. And it all starts with identifying those weaknesses, but also encouraging the partner to add value and be proactive for future actions. And then the last piece, I think this is probably the smartest thing too, is to identify what were my weaknesses or excuses in the past, and then how can I optimize those for the future now with the self-awareness plus the tools and the resources. So I'm curious, what are the most common, if there is a theme, if there's not, then just let us know, but is there a most common like resource or tool or need that the couples that you work with necessarily need to move forward as they do that future pacing?
I think what they need is to be honest with each other, right? I think we try to eliminate all of the noise, man. I mean, it's sometimes there's ego involved in relationships, right? Where the male, I'll speak from a male perspective because I'm a male, right? But sometimes we come into a situation when we hear the word fear, it's almost like an unmasculine terminology, right? So now it's like, well, I can't say this in front of my wife, right? I can't say that I'm really scared of failing, or I'm scared of, running out of money, right? Because your money is oxygen. You're talking about, and when you're on your entrepreneurial path and you're not getting an every 2-week check, you have to go out there and hunt, skin, cook, and eat everything that you eat and everything that you make. So yeah, I do think there's nothing that you really need to have as far as tangible. But the intangible is really going to be that honesty factor and willing to just lay it all on the line and be honest with your partner.
That makes a lot of sense. And I really appreciate that answer. Kai, did you want to add to that?
I was going to say, and then once you've had that transparency, not being afraid to take the leap, right? We talk a lot with other couples about perfect timing. There is no such thing as the perfect timing for, doing entrepreneurial feats, or there's no such thing as perfect timing for anything in life. So you just have to be able to be transparent and then be willing to take the risk in order to get the reward.
That makes a lot of sense. So a lot of the, shifts obviously with what's been going on in 2020, and then now here we're in 2021, brand new era, with the shift of working from home and a lot of digital going online. Have you seen an uptick in the demand of those? Are you seeing more entrepreneurial couples just saying, hey, let's think about this, let's actually go all in?
100%.
Yeah.
The answer to that is yes. Last year taught us all something, didn't it? And it's that factor of, gaining trust is no longer enough, right? There's ways in which you have to build business now that is just different, right? And the main thing that I like to say to a lot of our couples is that the alphabet soup behind your name that before could walk you into a room, it's not the same thing anymore, right? You can have the MBAs, the PMPs, Lean Six Sigma Black Belts, et cetera. But now it's a different trust factor that has to be applied. And it starts with the couple that wants to go into the business, right? So what we're doing is now when new couples are coming to us on the entrepreneurial path, we don't ask them what they want to do. Like our first question is not like, so what do you want to sell? It's more so like, why are you doing this? Why is this the right timing for you guys? Are you ready to take the steps that's necessary? And we want to get to know them as a couple before we start talking about business. The business part is easy. Making money is not hard to do. The difficulty is figuring out longevity and making sure that you stay married while you're making the money.
That makes a lot. You're pretty much building the foundation for the future, for the obstacles that you'll eventually face down the road.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's powerful work. Well, Oscar, Kiya, it's a pleasure again to have you here. For our listeners, what's the best place for people to go to, one, thank you for this episode, and two, learn more about what you're up to?
Yeah, we'd love for you guys to shoot us a text message. If you send a text to 678-672-1444, just text the word business. Just send the word business to that particular number. Again, 678-672-1444. And that comes to us direct. An immediate reply will be our direct numbers, exactly how the links to our websites, a link to our book, anything else that you may want to learn about us is right there. And then once we get the text messages, so we will reply back, and we're looking forward to the dialogue.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'll put that text on the show notes, not the link. I love it. Awesome. Well, pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
All right, take care.